Yeah, good.
The United States federal government should implement low carbon fuel standards to the aviation sector through a market-based instrument. Advantage one is green aviation, adverse extinction from energy independence, climate change, stratospheric aerosolization, and ocean acidification. Leland 20 aviation is leading many sectors faster, which capability growth and aviation, increase in emission, or short of the two degrees of color, without full energy, many travel. What increase casting the least system aviation, no carbon intensive emission occurred all to the degree different atmosphere process, and no warming particles, CO2, like carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, no sulfur monoxide, carbon warming, ocean acidification, increases, clouds out of climate change, fall below, like contributing radiation forcing, no stronger affinity use, no formation aviation, as a top of the better spin, no sugar like the aviation, no top down, 1/4 of the remaining carbon portion, warming, treasures, existential planetary ecosystem, and geopolitical factors, any 23 humanity because you has gas that has severe climate change, leading to collapse of food, infectious disease, and extinction, mechanical energy, side of corruption, the record of low time of the data, no one things data records into 79 human activity, increase from 1 degree Celsius, 23 million living secret warming, increase in the hard limit human adaptation, diseases spreading species, dying population, migrant, mammals and droughts, food carbon, collapse, carbon sinks, turn into emissions, unsustainable aviation forms sulfate aerosols. Aviation is unique and defense is systematically biased towards low emissions. December 24, aviation unique guys, color, aircraft, the treatment, a lot of consequences of global degradation, artificial leaves, something not used emission, models of the bias, impacts on their quality contributed to U.S. and single survey air surf, responsible aviation, ozone reaching surface and permitting formation of ozone, aviation during each season, at all altitudes, sulfate aerosols wreck the ozone layer, extinction, knowing 22 extra, sulfate block sunlight cooling VI, reflecting sun negative effect on ozone, decrease in degradation, decrease sunlight cascading air, dehumidification, food production, be societies, world sense, we rely on your food, spread of disease and violent conflict. Market-based SAF production unlocks environmental sustainability, enhances U.S. energy independence, and has widespread economic benefits. 24 security, reducing dependence on energy political stability, diversity, project aviation, volatile oil supply chain, products and economic growth, investment, and local benefits. Spread aviation related fuel, innovation, nearby reducing PM 80% reduction in emission through feedstock utilization, renewable biomass waste, absorb CO2, improve productivity, SAF, 48 SDG related climate action, energy innovation, diversity, commitment, sustainability, aviation, social license, hobbies, and SC critical, human neutrality, categories, broader benefits, U.S. energy independence, underpins resilience to transnational crisis, extinction, 24 across multiple instability, Russia, China, American order, energy, competition, the research, including anti-Germanic. Policies under security necessary to these American war for supply restriction under cooperation increase war, reduce dependence on Russia, harming ability to wage war. A federal aviation LCFS is necessary and sufficient. The plan's mechanism is key to certainty, durability, and efficacy. Got 120 SGC and result for relations supplier. 34 SA for reliability, aviation, and aviation policy cabinet. Recommended by provision for policy for aviation design aviation to LCF benefit from experience with executive policy feasible market adopted 30% CO reduction by 2035 annual reduction is useful treaty concerning indicating direction. Not permitted as other sectors see reduction, not permitted second visa. Neutral feedstock is going to facility includes activity. Simulation based on transfer LCA current data, and then equivalent boundaries incorporating regenerative efficient carbon input, nearest emission to visa ILC emissions are included LCF assessment, and then ICU part of maintaining coolness system boundary between a safe and corporate progress and the ability to establish an outside increase annually, and to maintain calculated requirement for inclusive competition for side piece minimum, and for regulation to maintain for investment decision making authority production exists, and under current statute, current statute authority for facing aviation fuel emergency HTM, and under 49 U.S. Code of Judicial Bodyguard against reversal and invoicing, and ingredient U.S. approach to SAF is to maintain aviation LCFS can cover policy, and drives expanded production and use, only massively scaling on market-based mechanisms targeted at SAFs can scale production capacity, supply and demand, sufficient to meet target. Limit 22 policy to report scale supply chain versus the other case globally market driven mechanism country, scale up capacity, supply demand, procurement scheme, create a stable loading market ability, maintenance link, non-affected with certificate, utility market efficiency, sales supply extent, cover SAF for support is a current incentive to produce or reform road transport SAF market innovative insurance selfish, policy can doing volunteer network safe setting up robust market development, national representation, the launch markets. Money alone is insufficient. Some level of SAF is inevitable, but demand side policy market is needed. Catalan 23 leader, SAF deployment relative cost of market price, cost high protection cost, and then believe that by the case attractive sufficient investment in other fuels, SAF, the difference between other fuels, SAF carried by low capacity and consistent demand, and the sustainability certification of SAF production to solid delivery using the certification scheme, legislation essential to SAF supply chain responsible to things community structure, and the main remain fundamental part of this character of firm regulatory obligation SAF is support to fuel mix demand for SAF is considered structural, unable to support finance without financial and legitimate revival not driven, demand without withstanding changes financial performances. Advantage 2 is readiness. SAFs, but the biggest internal link to that and energy security that categorizes broad defense innovation, more than 24 aviation quarters around the fossil fuel sources, and challenge energy security, SAF production, revolution action, more resilient reduce dependency, vulnerability, mitigate for mitigate, target strategic advantage, reduce dependency, bolster readiness, adapt leadership, supply chain ensure effectiveness, and diverse reduce crucial for national security. SAF, new innovation without the defense, research, carbon, capacity, critical for military resilience. That unlocks multiple military advantages. 1, fuel logistics, and supply chains, current operations, undermine effectiveness, the IU 23 data, especially resource manufacturing, logistics, expanding vulnerability, and opposite low and the fuel system. Ship resupply rate of synthetic fuel production small scale, mobile rapidly deployable system, you can train logistics that you create, fuel from CO2, reduce burden on any supply chain reason, and the matrix also create effectiveness, force, resilient, sustainable SAF, reduce on wellness, remote forward location, eliminate dependency, local market leveraging, and the C1 mobile forward factor, enable Asia basing around, and more greater flexibility. Second, supply chains and budgets, pricing volatility, seeds power, the adversaries, Herbert and 22, volatility of oil strategy, vulnerability, and for import reduction dependence, adversary, energy logistics, and changes clean energy, alternative fuel risk, fuel cost, price volatility, rising oil prices, and such fuels affordable alternatives, they don't maintain cost of annually, and maintain SAF with lower cost and even smaller improvement, and that impacts 3 23 air-made fuel, LBN, and 23 airframes. Testing tank brew fuel for the AFG centralized supply chain, allowing office certain fuel factors release 10 use explosive supply chain. The basic you don't want to dead fuel incidents principle cause of death future basis can produce it quickly for basing pricing. This key and underpins effective operations. But glue 17 massive patrolling air force lead away for testing aviation fashion. There's Asia Pacific Area 3 bases of a load of directed possibility arrows. Despite adoption of fuel on like a commission favor aviation biofuel comes costly air. The force to provide all aircraft using GPA to fly biofuel, but instead of the subject to change budget cycle global agility where air force rapidly sees opportunity to assure allies aircraft class and able to fly whatever fuel is available. Air superiority stops extinction Berkey. 24 air Americans in their challenge China in the Pacific to Russia on Ukraine, Iran pursuing North Korea threatening nuclear NSA's destabilization air force one element of security air superiority essential condition operation ability to fight by longer ability to strike a disabled CNC and the force compromise nuclear try to deter adversaries and desert storm Ukraine and third the rest of modernized for security army native low missiles fighters and can be affectionate cost Russia try to post extra the challenge extra must ensure air must support air superiority. Advantage 3 is ethanol. Ethanol plan is set to atrophy has meant soaring demand for EVs and international competition. The plan is a lifeline that bolsters the long-term sustainability of the industry. Section 24 is the boom launch RFS because such a less than 4 billion falling, increase of 4 million recruited bonus prices, market failed to sustain charges, large harvest and competition, Brazil trade war further road and beginning, market share ethanol visa studies line domain lobby hold, there's a Congress passes short-term media market with long-term SAF industry best technology electrify unlikely to become a real SAF market, running some industry portion SAF translated 5 billion gallon demand, increase consumption to the SAF for large ethanol demand, this harvest demand would expand far beyond 3 billion. Ethanol is a lifeline for rural economies and the agriculture industry. SAS are key to economic stability. Adamson in 24, U.S. is the largest producer of corn ethanol, single 180 production plants under rural region contributing about 54.2 billion to supporting 400 agricultural community benefit that would be a decreasing demand for gas and ethanol. There's an opportunity ethanol provides support for ATG represents growing demand, offset declining demand. The provides support for rural communities, corn production bringing investment value to rural community. The total loss economic value due to ag industry scaling of massive benefit. Rural ag community loss of traded asset total. Hundreds of billion assets skills ethanol result in positive economic benefits scaling. Interest no traded ethanol has had assets. Rural economic decline is a key internal link to populism. No all causes posed yet. 21. Long-term economic decline faces reliance social capital behind population goes strong. But decline can be directed by low box, small rural so-called places that don't matter how. And then obviously people leaving the use by low box is for venture to demonstrate that econ decline are fundamental factors in analysis, county level analysis. And then back to the long-term impact of inequality. And then econ decline. Populism destroys effective governance necessary. And there's one degree filters extinction. Land 21 extinction. Now serves other danger policy, political complicated people creating institutions. Internationalism, a little respect to expert system, sideline working common nuclear because resources such as fire combined. The factors with deadly superintelligence, fell disaster, and could be lurking tackling exorcism, political problem value, all human rights, and the population crucial to humanity, survival population, the uninterested in long-term threats. Expanding ethanol is key to sustain farmland value and corn production. The 24 ethanol relies on corn increase. Need a higher demand expected increase the price lead to more plenty or higher production. Need to increase the value 2,000 increase in conversion. And the crop land also lead to land use changes, rice likely increase the price of result. And ag value land values are high coordinate sustainability growth much higher person. The explanation for this collapse obliterates farmland value, destroys the food supply and causes financial shock in 23 sector. Can weather storm consider reliable corn ethanol EVs not decline ethanol value loss. And the price of 5 loss approximate decline experience during crisis. And the EVs are structural decline result in permanent reduction in demand and price. And the climate hard implication of farming and food supply rural business relying by rural schools FCS underwriting farmland debt lower fertilizer. And the ag economy dropping price concerns that leaders rely on and make it challenging to make payment with dropping the value collateral stress financial security but be historic. Nuclear war US IVC Castle on 18 US faces war ISIS nuclear war competition with Russia China spiral without security post strife immigration leading incubation manufacturing food is imperative global size and the prices produce stable countries and security leading stability East Asia and Africa destabilized population generate conflict America next manufacturing labor initial unleashed volatility innovation farmers leverage expertise and manage risks shocks ignite global hotspots with sharp in 24 downturn risk interstate conflict rapidly low political inflation high risk of population stability and the growth escalation European result Thomas part new constantly implementing virtually to step in the vacuum shifts in econ for the country no surge of flash push will major country condition leading to rapidly expanding crisis major powers now that's just interleaded destabilization drawing a major power escalating directly involved new soft landing prevention patient foot falling tide river strong spending use and strong unimaginable fragility passing takeover a sustainability escalation brings deep economic crisis consolidation even profound effect global market trade high debts go unusable help cushion impact on the same degree and sharpening soda.
Okay, you good?
Yep.
What is the internal link between the aviation industry and resolving emissions in other sectors?
In other sectors?
Yes.
Probably none. We've said that aviation is the only sector that matters for our emissions. Black carbon is way worse. Its emissions are way higher, so
The
they
Yang
reflect
evidence
more.
says that human activities causes a greenhouse effect. It cites emissions broadly.
Yeah, Wang says that warming, the greenhouse effect causes bad warming, but the Lily card above that says that the worst forms of catastrophic warming are caused by aviation emissions because of things like black carbon.
What
Our
differentiates?
lead evidence also makes a structural claim that there are efforts to reduce emissions now in other sectors, but aviation is the hardest to decarbonize. So even if
Why
it's
is it
a small
hardest to
portion of
decarbonize?
overall
Why
emissions,
is
it's
it-
a large portion of current emissions growth.
Why is it
expected.
hard to decarbonize?
Because it relies on fossil fuels now.
Okay,
and there's not
okay.
an
You
SAF.
just said that the aviation industry is the hardest to decarbonize. Your warrant is because it's
It's hard to
Because-
decarbonize because other industries have solutions that are already scaled, like EVs, for
Why is it
example,
not
for cars,
scaled?
but SAF has not yet been
why is it
scaled.
not scaled?
SAF isn't scalable now because there's not demand side policy. The last Catala card says that the grand challenge
Okay.
in IRA created investment in SAFs.
What evidence do you think you read that says that there will be a supply side response that capable of scaling that
Yeah.
sort of technology?
Both Catala cards. It says that there is some supply now. Biden's grand challenge said that we should invest in SAF, and the IRA
Well, I guess
subsidized parts of
why
SAF.
is there a lack of demand?
Well, there's not an incentive to do so. Fossil fuels are still cheaper, so there's no reason to have like.
And so the
blending
plan will
of
have to make some costlier?
No, we've said that SAFs are just as cheap after the fact.
Yeah, why? Because make it costlier now.
Well, because
Come
it
on.
creates a credit system.
Yeah,
which
what does that
means
credit system do?
All of our solvency evidence says it leads to the creation of economies of scale. When you have a larger production, each marginal unit becomes cheaper.
Why do
to
they get a
produce.
larger production as a result of the plan?
Because there will be more demand. Suppliers will increase their supply in response.
Why is there
because,
no demand
there
now?
will be a requirement. Because it's too expensive now.
Okay. What evidence says the plan causes the DoD to buy planes that are powered by biofuels?
Our evidence says that planes already can be powered by biofuels. I think it's Herbert says that the F-35 and the J whatever jet can be fueled by drop-in fuels. There's just no reason to. And there are current DoD projects investing in SAF fuels. It's just that there's not an economic incentive to do so, and not enough to
So
power them.
economic incentive, if it's a government mandate to uptake that sort of technology, then why is it relying on
There's
private
not a
sector
government.
investment?
There's not a government mandate.
Okay, your Elvin evidence says that the Air Force is already testing air-made fuel. I'm
Yes,
confused
it's
why that's.
testing them. It's not adopting them.
Okay, what's the difference?
It's like-
why would
it's
they
like-
why would they test something if they're not going to adopt it?
Because the aviation industry obviously wants to go green, but there's no, like, they still reliant on other fuels. They're reliant on foreign oil. Like, there's a litany of reasons they haven't adopted SAF yet, but they're investing in it.
Okay, that's fine.
My bad. You're good. It's move over. Use this. Okay, I'm good.
The order is 5, green aviation, readiness, ethanol.
I'm gonna take 1 second of prep. Did you read the white chart evidence? You did? Okay. 3 seconds.
Everyone good?
Not quite, sorry.
Okay.
You said 5.
Yeah.
And then,
Green aviation, readiness, ethanol.
okay. Okay.
Alright. Michigan good? Alright. The states counterplan the 50 states and all relevant territories should adopt low carbon fuel standard programs for the aviation sector and state that if preempted, the states will withhold cooperation with federal initiatives in the event of preemption. The 50 states and all relevant territories ought to implement pilot programs and increase fiscal incentives to develop and adopt sustainable aviation fuel in the aviation sector. States solve it's in line with existing federal priorities, which disproves every preemption argument in state programs alone. Zero airline emissions fits in analogous 24 LCFS. Eliminate the exemption for interstate fossil jet fuel would require suppliers to reduce emissions from interstate flights to support increased production of sustainable fuel. A boon for SAF producers. Though new demand mandates, CARB published amendments. Interstate flight no longer accepted changes would create a market signal for SAF. Reduces cost premium over conventional jet fuel companies that have been under pressure to decarbonize. Could face opposition from the FAA. However, FAA set a goal for net zero through the SAF aviation tachograph efficiency, so the agencies may determine CARB's actions compatible with the goal of proposed changes. A bold, unprecedented attempt to reduce emissions is to stimulate development and development of SAF, the regulation could have wide-ranging implications for the industry, and at worst, including the poison pill of non-cooperation prevents preemption. Because 17 preemption constitutes the greatest threat to the state power. The current approach to risk harbors preempting too much state law. Poison pill legislation would give Congress a reason not to preempt by imposing a cost. There's no shortage of leverage. States would threaten to withhold service, and Congress preempt the provision would make Congress or a court think twice an opportunity for bargaining rather than unilateral decisions. States use leverage to preserve authority. And next off is the rates DA. The United States federal government should forbid the enactment of new tariffs, tax cuts, and deportations. The economy is booming, and rate cuts are likely the only scenario for a downturn as the AFF inflationary shock. Schechner 11.7. The labor market has softened inflation ease, leaving the door open for more cuts. The prospect of cuts following a decisive election is supportive of business and consumer confidence, although subject to significant changes. Forecast point to lower rates, labor conditions ease, and unemployment remains low. Inflation rates are falling. The big takeaway is that more rate cuts are coming if inflation keeps cooling, and divesting from oil devastates the U.S. economy and spooks financial markets. Ties 9/12 defunding oil, gas, and coal shrinks domestic supply. Decarbonization is the real threat to the American economy and financial markets. The macroeconomic impact will be decidedly negative. It will competitively hamstring the U.S. There's no global energy transition. Emissions have increased reliance on intermittent power. Power will strain and destabilize the grid. Constraining production will lead to higher prices, which will feed through the entire economy. Downsizing will lead to significant job losses and shrink GDP. And rising energy prices yields inflationary expectations that force a rate hike. Mids 23 energy inflation led to a prolonged upside pressure on inflation. Corporate policies contribute to higher interest rates. Monetary policies focus on inflation expectations that are above target. Push banks to raise rates. Energy price important part of transportation, heating, utility, critical for every industry. Cause firms to raise prices to maintain profit. And workers bargain for higher wages. Carbon price shocks to become embedded in expectations to rise 1% result in prices to rise 0.2. Taxes over $50 at a 0.4. Realized inflation and fiscal miscalibration.
There you go, that correct point.
All right. Next is the judicial nominations, DA. Senate Democrats are focused on forcing through judicial appointments now, but focus and floor time are keyholes. 11 Dems to confirm Biden as judicial nominees. Schumer to devote significant Senate floor time. We have a rapidly closing window to confirm judges who will serve as guardrails. Even one judge can make a difference. The Dems need every vote. Durbin aims to confirm every possible nominee. Democrats have the power to focus on judges if they decided to do so, but the process can be time-consuming, crowding out legislative business, and the plan is incredibly polarizing. Vandenberg and Metzger, 18 in theory, regulatory schemes can motivate aviation firms to reduce emissions. In practice, this has been difficult. Prospects for adequate action are dim at best. Support is not intense. Confrontations polarized, ideologically motivated interest block mitigation measures, even when voters express some support. And Biden judges are key to check. Trump, McNeil, 11, 15. Democracy is stronger for this progress, and we cannot afford to slow down. Biden's appointees bring important professional diversity who have significant experience at protecting rights. Each seat matters. We live in an era of unprecedented threats for abuse of public power. Issues will be resolved in our federal courts. Confirmations are crucial. We need judges who will uphold our Constitution, counter authoritarian threats, and serve as a check against abuse of the power coming from the White House. An unchecked Trump causes extinction, but strengthening safeguards. Saul Stanley, 24. Destabilization, the biggest setback for great power conflict. AI, virus, and climate disruption in the U.S. The pattern of democracy that descended into authoritarian regimes. Destabilization, likely consequences make it an X factor. Trajectory of democratic norms is unsustainable. High levels of dysfunction will yield destabilization, which would manifest as an authoritarian regime. Are immense, including consequences are immense, including forced suffering, X risks AI, bio-risk, and climate. The endpoint is destabilization. Institutions work resisting Trump, made them weaker, and they continue to be eroded. Trump finding success or replacing non-radical Republicans to enable a future constitutional coup. The demise of democracy is not a linear line. We could be near the inflection point. Next off is T subsets. It means throughout. Words and phrases. 59. The word it means throughout. And market-based instruments are economy-wide. McHenry. 9. MBIs are designed to address market distortions. Measures are economy-wide scope, and decarbonization requires economy-wide application. 22. There are two aspects of decarbonization. The first entails use of zero carbon energy to achieve decarbonization. All aspects of the economy must change. Industry, transport, buildings, ag, and land use sectors must be transformed. And vote NEG 1 limits they devolve into hundreds of specific subsets like aviation, ag, defense, or rail, and allow regulation of individual companies like Exxon or Amazon. And 2. Ground economy-wide changes ensures links to core generics like econ and politics by forcing the act to structurally change energy and be big enough to deviate from previous energy policies like the IRA. Next off is T adopt. Clean energy requires the management and promulgation of renewable energy. Kaminsky 23. Clean energy policies are the rules that determine how renewable energy will be regulated. They provide incentives for use of low emission sources. Stimuli may come in the form of taxes, subsidy standards, fines, carbon caps, taxes, and strict regulations. And adopting requires taking on a policy. The act merely adapts the current clean energy policy as distinct language. Tool 22. Adopt a policy means formally accepting and implementing it. Adapt means to change or to modify to suit new situations. The company that adapts formally accepting and implementing them. The company that adapts or simply modifying them. And vote NEG to preserve limits and ground minor repairs like the app for infinite. Our interpretation requires a fundamental change in strategy that locks in uniqueness and stops the proliferation of assets, tweak RFS rates, gas tax levels, IRA funding, or otherwise continue the status quo approach. The green aviation advantage. One, SAFs fail, and the ones the plan incentivizes collapse food security and destroy forests. Last off in Denver 24 SAF opens the door to corn ethanol despite strong crop-based biofuels increase net emissions while diverting valuable crop and aviation emissions expected to double by 2050. Crop-based fuels are worse than fossil fuel alternatives, increase hunger and habitat destruction, displaces food crops, which drives expansion into forest converting release of stored carbon and reduces sequestration, powering airplanes with crops is extremely inefficient. Effects on food security and global forests would be severe if the U.S. were to reach 35 billion gallons using ethanol. It's leading approach to require 114 million acres of corn, 20% more than the total area planted of corn in the U.S. for all purposes. The increase would drive up food prices and increase hunger would close 500 million tons of carbon sequestration. This represents a net increase of emissions of 340 million tons MT compared to burning the same petroleum-based jet fuel. SAF made soy have an even bigger impact because soy is less efficient. New production comes from palm and soybeans, major drivers of deforestation, and 2, destruction of North American forest wrecks the lungs of the earth. Extinction burger. 12, severe conditions that threaten U.S. forests. 90% consider forests in need of protection. Forests are a symbol of North American essential to the health of our planet. The lungs of the earth. They play a vital role in cleaning air and moderating temperatures. Are critical habitats. Even the size of a football field has a tremendous impact on there. That's why conservation is important. And 3, tech won't arrive quick enough to solve warming. Griggs and Haworth 23 Paris requires global CO2 emissions to climb by 45%. Timescales on tally with the speed of tech improvements in aviation remain reliant on kerosene. Net zero aviation only by 2060. Continued reliance on offsetting direct air capture have yet to come into being. Fuel efficiency is not being delivered quick enough to offset continued growth of flights of full electric flights. Unlikely to be feasible. Biofuels will require rapid scaling of production. Would require doubling palm oil and the clearance of 3.2 million hectares of forests. 5 gigatons of carbon emissions through land use change development and regulatory approval is far from certain. Production of liquid hydrogen use fossil fuel methane doubts remain over whether it is possible to competitively scale up production without adding to carbon emissions. Aviation fuel requires sustained investment in storage, production, and distribution, twice as expensive as kerosene. And 4, an uptake in SAF turns advantage 1 and 3. Bonazia 10.7 allocating land to expand production and constrain food while causing forested areas to be clear for crops. SAF's emissions are even worse for fossil alternatives. Removing biomass will slow carbon sequestration. Crops require millions of acres and 5 non-CO2 emissions. 0 case timberly. 21 aviation accounts for 2.5% of global emissions, but its warming impact is far larger owing to other gases and particulates it emits. These include nitrogen oxides and contrast clouds. These trip the impacts in 6. 7. All right. 7, no ozone impact. Science daily 16 environmental scientists have found the surface ozone does not necessarily inhibit the productivity of a natural ecosystem. The extent to which the ozone damaged natural systems was not well understood. Unmanaged forests remain productive as systems because they contain multiple tree species, each with different sensitivity. And this differential sensitivity allows a more resistant species to compensate for the more sensitive one. Researchers found ozone changes that relative abundance, but that overall ecosystem productivity and the ability of the ecosystem to store carbon did not change. Previous research modeled forests broadly, but not species.
Energy dependence inevitable in other sectors.
Energy dependence is inevitable because of other sectors. Readiness. 1, air power doesn't stop war. Filter 15, air power will be subject to fragilities, and the political leader who chooses to rely on positive goals of stability and democracy have proved difficult to achieve. Air power is a cyber-strong enticing air power that seductively modern courtship. It appears to offer gratification without commitment. That promise is dangerous. The last thing we want is leadership to think war is too easy. Claude would have commented about difficulty of achieving political objectives. And 2, over-reliance on air power is bad myths. 16, relying on air power rather than direct methods is easier to disengage. The problem with the U.S. air power is so good that policymakers can lose sight of its limitations using to seek decisive results that only come from a direct force.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Status?
Conditional.
Okay. And then you skip the one in the pipe defense card.
Yes. Skip.
T subsets. In means throughout. The resolution says in the United States, as in throughout the United States. Why do we not mean in?
Jared.
Well, it's in the context of defining the other words, like reading the resolution as a whole.
In the context of other words in the res, the other words in the res that in modifies is the United States. Why are we not throughout?
Because you do not affect all sectors within the United States.
But in doesn't modify sectors.
I mean, I guess, yeah, you can meet in, but
Okay.
I don't think that's like the main
Again,
definition
you've
we
also
would extend.
defined MBIs as economy-wide.
The interest rates, they said, divesting from oil, I guess biofuels and SAF are drop-in fuels, which means that they're blended into things such as oil. So it doesn't reduce oil demand, but actually allows oil to continue. What do you think the link is?
Wing 24, 1AC, SAF market foster energy security by reducing dependency on fossil fuels. Diversification protect aviation from volatility of oil prices.
So
you cannot link this.
actually that's kind of the other cards in the 1AC says that it's because of fossil fuel dependence on other countries. What do you think the link is?
The whole point is that the United States is reliant on fossil fuels.
Yeah, but this
And then
card is
we read
about
link evidence.
defunding domestic oil and gas companies.
Well, you have made the argument that you transition away. Is
We
your
made an
internal-
argument that the card you just read says we reduce energy dependence on other countries. Why do you think this is a link?
Because your weighing evidence says the reason the aviation industry is affected now is because of the volatility in oil prices.
Because we're reliant on other countries, correct?
Right.
So this card is about defunding domestic
Yes,
oil and gas
and again, you
companies.
have made internal link arguments for why you transition away from that. I don't understand.
Okay, sure. The second part of this card says that it's because is quote descriptive of the quote. It says quote increased U.S. reliance on intermittent wind and solar generation, and then says it affects the grid, which also causes electricity heights. The plan has nothing to do with the grid. What do you think the link is?
Wait, which card are you talking about?
The same link card. The second reason it causes price hikes is because of electricity and the grid, solar, and wind. The plan does nothing to do with those.
Yeah, that portion of the card obviously doesn't apply, but the rest of the card does.
Okay, so the block has to go for the just oil price fluctuation link.
No, we'll make spillover arguments. The first, like one of the first lines in your first 1AC card says, aviation sector is intrinsically or intricately linked to many sectors. So we
Okay.
will make arguments for why it's interconnected.
Why does the
other
plan
firms
spill
if
over
you're-
to solar and wind?
Huh?
Why does the plan spill over to solar and wind?
Well, again, we'll make spillover arguments in the
I'm
block.
asking you to make that now.
No, I'll read a card in the block, and then you can ask me about
well,
it.
explain the card then. I'm curious.
No, I'm not going to let
This
you
defies
get a jump on
logic.
the card.
Okay, sure. I don't remember what I asked status.
Conditional.
Okay, that's my sure. No. Oh wait, we should. We didn't get to that. Then I'll do it. Sure. Right now. Okay, great. She's fine.
It's sent. Is everyone good for the order while they wait to get it? Okay, it's green aviation, readiness, ethanol. So 1, 2, 3. T, clean energy policy. T, adopt. The state's counterplan. The rates DA. And then the nominees DA.
Did you say the order after the T arguments one more time?
Yeah. States, counterplan, rates DA, and then the nominations DA.
I just got it. Just got it opened up.
Yes, getting providers.
Everyone's good?
Yep.
Okay. The AFF solves deforestation, white side 24 aerosols are central works for atmosphere, hemisphere, condition, public tropical, aerosols, major consequence, contributed by sphere, hydrosphere causes warming, precipitated, cascading, tipping points, force, destruction, and polar. The chart is not unique. Ethanol production is high now and has been high for decades. It inevitably declines because of electrification and imports. So the past 20 years should trigger the Link 20C, Section 24 EPA Act and EAS Act. Ethanol production, ethanol now uses 30% of corn. But life cycle emission analysis also incorporating land use change emissions into analysis instead of regenerative agriculture and inefficient use of farmlands. That's the Topicality evidence. Regenerative ag means SAFs are emission negative. Edits to 24 external benefits related to regenerative improve soil health, farming, sustainability, cascading of beneficial effect. These practices reduce emission waste, reduce life cycle emission, HEF, optimizing soil carbon sequestration, improving soil health, reducing agricultural fertilizer health, reduce environmental benefits, include soil quality, reduce erosion, improve air and water, enhance biodiversity, crop resiliency, and reduce emissions. But there is no impact to deforestation. 16. There are 3 trillion trees of million crop down everywhere. We're taking 200 years for horses to be. This is unlikely. The number would not be the word box. We can survive for 4,000 years. Oxygen remain empty, not considering phytoplankton pollutes due to abundance of carbon. Increased oxygen trees cause an increase in temperatures. Other countries are not caused. They say tech doesn't come fast enough. Its uniqueness for us, SAFs already exist. This just says that the industry has to be scaled up, but it's not. The plan mandates demand, so the industry will need to scale up. That's the Catala. The plan solves non-CO2 emissions. Those also come from fossil fuels. That's legally warming causes heat waves, drought, famine, sea level rise, pandemics, war, environmental collapse, and shocks. Uncertainty means tail and risk outweigh. That's the yang. Evidence: ozone depletion causes extinction and survival heat. 100% cancer rates. Fertility declines kill the population. That's NOI. And energy independence deters conflict with Russia, China, and Iran. It's the largest internal link to global stability. That's McCown. It's not inevitable. Fossil fuels create reliance on adversarial supply. Readiness. Air power stops extinction bombers and ISR prevent misattribution and underpin deterrence of desert storm in Ukraine. Both world wars approved necessity. That's Berkeley. Pursuing air powers and apples. So the sole question is competitiveness. Wall Street 21. Americans would airstrikes to do something, and if you're strong, whether to consider not airport, whatever incident to divide and manipulate airstrikes, after the wrong, or to apply air power, advancing about the decision victories, by victories of fight indices on airport, the alternative is air denial that has zero credibility, green landing cost by escalation, based on the idea of denial, surrender, for victory, the resounding message was airport lead to decisive victories, effective return of approved decisive in European theater, the Pacific North US allies united against United Hobbit attempts that failed of World War defeated by invited example of denial, feeling of the seizing streets, bombing can be effective knowledge of especially in the nuclear age, and the Met's evidence says is vital for deterrence and de-escalation. Highlighting is uncertain for its leadership via air power contains adversaries. I was explained above. Ethanol advantage was all dropped. Economic shocks trigger global revisions. Tinderbox greenlights aggression, causes diversion, and amplifies hostility, causes war in Ukraine. Israel, Taiwan. That's why our evidence. It means the rates DA is non-unique because fiscal miscalibration is inevitable since foreign values are going to fall off a cliff. Populism causes collapse of governance. The state response existential threats, nuclear war, pandemics, AI, disasters, and black swan threats that slay and food wars. Going to nuclear scarcity pushes millions into poverty, causing civil upheavals, initiative, and WMD use, which escalates every hotspot that's cast law. T. Clean energy policy includes subsets before the full-term CPO over energy policy committee. Clean energy policy rules and frameworks enacted that different would be very limited management of instead of the form of taxes, subsidies, and first purchase instead of like caps, taxes, or restrictions. The interpretation could work for energy policy, but the topic says adopt an energy policy. A proceed discrete accountable thing sources. 28 A proceed to 100 now distant use supplies evidence from the term a discrete accountable thing. An individual energy policy refers to one to thousands. People with the policies who about energy use energy policy report in the U.S. states enacted energy policies. Some policies use in some subsidies, tax credits, direct spending in research or other types that affect how energy systems develop. If they wrote a decarbonization into definitions. We meet in topic says in the U.S. The plan is in the U.S. in means with between the purposes and limits within the place level as follows to express relation and presence rate includes sort of by limits as for one after on they allow hundreds of random industry picks the lack deficits to are limiting their interpretation is narrow creating only one type of out through predictability lacks intent to define functional limits all states econ fossil fuels regulations counterplan reasonability they race the bottom and crowd out substance T adopt we meet in a vacuum least arbitrary metric we meet the plan provides incentives for low emissions energy sources via carbon tax and capture trades but takes on policy. Go back to other T. Term 4 means intended to further. Page 13. Supreme Court has held for further words of findings with further decarbonization and process of reducing carbon gas and all limited does destroy chemicals. CE. Denoting process of facility reducing carbon gas is being related to the result of process. Go back, sorry. Any sector, GT 24 I think clean energy policy more ambitious policies will have targets for subsectors. A policy has been adopted if it's been put into effect. Kelly 11 adopts as of no contributions with ordinary meaning of reasonable person adopting put into effect that's best precision, intent to define and strict legally skies research, after minor repairs are key to nuanced tests of status quo to avoid overpowered states. Firm to both, firm to the counterplan, no solvency when military states can't make binding regulations on the Air Force. 2 is preemption, $1,020,000. FAA agents given exclusive authority over airspace with the purpose of centralizing the single authority for aerospace rules and leaving as well as the aspect of aviation over seas and environmental programs. AV 2 certainty is key. State non-cooperation creates ambiguity. Direct aviation investments in the sustainable fuels that's Catala inserted and certainty is vital for investor confidence. COT 24. Several reasons why certainty there's no clear record, there's uncertainty regarding production of reasons or work with transparency each provides little confidence perceivers to changes and practice in the SROPI project with competing on these compete as the certainty will provide revenue will support revenues for strike down providing relevant federalism not be every program with federalism unfortunately judicial review for mechanisms for balancing out violators but federalism working will be within our judicially applying clear procedural review links to net benefit progressive climate action will be tied to Biden there's no net benefit 1 is no spillover 1 use is not enough to set nor model precedent 2nd is constitutional regression turns the net benefit hook 18 Federalism is made of harmony system national entity will play a role in constitutional regression in terms of negotiating state action in terms of an anti-democratic coalition pattern and spread around the country reading one party state evolution accelerating authority management advice interpretation to many president control and electoral competition rights and rule of law to the state that becomes until pitch and any amount is untroubling rates. Harm to both, no rate cuts now, perceptual and Chima 11-18. Fed halt heading after Hawkins remarks on the likelihood of it hesitancy to cut raises from victory pitches to inflation immigration will drive inflation higher prices rose at 2.6%. Jet fuel price volatility is causing airline costs to skyrocket, killing with SAF credit solve Patterson 22. With the pricing fuels skyrocketing, SAF will offer really 30% of the cost as by plummeted airlines raise up industry like completely fuels interstate so you SAF prices will trend outward openly the reported price from the SAF credit kicks our production cost of yield of decades medicate so ugly SAF end up more competitive offer credit to SAF purchase to offset higher costs local hydrogen fail sells lithium ion battery government policy make economics worse flight prices are high now whole houses are 11-18% all time high they're not enough season prices jet fuel increase airlines are facing reality of pilots attendance as well as high labor costs Powell says they're not in any hurry to cut meal like 11-14 Powell said solid economy low number labor was selling that shrinking investment gains no big time to risking cutting rates economy is not something so we need to be hurry to lower Powell said price increases now return to 2% growth that are expected limited progress on inflation price increases remain elevated we are committed to finishing the job airline price links are non-unique health sir 10 of 3 CPI for airline tickets dropped by 25% larger jumps since the event began tracking phase in solves a progressive blend requirement that increases annually means there's no immediately shock link insert when you see Catella reference in the short term cost increases are marginal PwC 22 SAF cost markup pieces 9% per ton company cost fair log flight raised by $10 to $17 funding indicating markup that's made by airline customers add and tightening the regulatory requirements if we're willing to pay versus the results are promising no overreactions in individual commodity inflation doesn't cause texture 21 Powell don't have to the price increases not weren't tied to any but laid out the criteria before when open. The requires that they were looking for relative cost inflation or measure because inflation or individually noisy if sustained inflation were serious the Fed was wrong doing what AFF pretty science. Powell doesn't pretty inoculation from the inflation hawks would ditch him. Impact the slump rates have been high for years and are high now. There's no internal link. Vince is about a carbon tax, which isn't us, and the act doesn't increase energy prices, which is also what it's about. There's no impact. Cuts don't solve uncertainty and monetary signals are dwarfed by noise. Arian 912. Rate comes with uncertainty by the important impact on our company, industrial business, many exhaustion savings, according to current debt maximizing a current economy robbed of stabilizing farmers because of some integration, seed fragmentation, influence of defensive policies been eroded after the mistake of inflation, trade story, volatility, view in new markets feel mismanagement on basic influences. There's no rates impact. Result 24 rate decisions have no impact. Things out to productive capacity give skills workers so with more than half technology skills those are with growth, not the Fed.
Say renewables
Renewables are
inevitable.
inevitable, which means that so will links to the DA, nominee DA. It's only a tiny number of nominees, and Republican opposition is non-unique minority. There are 4 nominees opening in the committee of 23 district for nominee spending floor committee. Both has already been already a floor votes move on to the unified view of opposition to Trump Act, antitrust and blocking nominations, other issues, thump and matches, authority payment, and one is to how to get through his M's with a few words to new things as state, midfield, disaster, defense, building, shutdown, nation, political toward aviation, would make it all about him, tons of opposition writers, over 13 for Congress, 7 follow nominees, Musk, road activists, nominees, and Davis urged Republicans to vote on movement to the model consistently opposed, maintain would not vote for any who does not garner at least one special legislature like spending consume time Democrats, D is not intrinsic. A logical policymaker would do both, not create a logical opportunity cost. Plan is popular. March 24. Republicans and Prevention boosts as the group Republicans clarifies that safety is ineligible under guaranteed similar language. Patron Republican formula language is notable even if there are state and other climate programs authority already exists. The plan carries out through the FAA 1AC. Control between relevant territory authority, FAA aviation fuel standard, FAA prescribed different composition of aircraft fuel, no control to aircraft emissions, which shields the link because it won't be perceived. No vote switching. Edward 16. The best evidence between the other presidential control could be within others who go back to the effective voting party ideology. Then continued by the Senate first exercise influence that Congress made up their minds from respecting 1111. Keeping open with disaster defense policy bill confirming doesn't need to pass spending or existing two sides have a major difference from the take of disaster funding Congress. Pass defense policy bill culture war prohibition to ability to one deficit opposed informing judges is a priority 17 and pending on regulated tech has no impact on Landrio 22. It is strong for regulation eliminates opportunities benefits biases selectively implements in favor of regulation precautionary ritual could lead to overperceived any threat fear of unknown amplified risk. Chevron makes it inevitable. Dvorsky et al. 24. Course by exercise independent judgment Chevron replaced with judicial improvers have significant impact on admin market on admin Connor's voting issue dispo solves.
You good? The nominees, DA, just as a flow check between the floor time link thumped and plan popular, which arguments did you make?
Floor time link thumped was Reuters, and then skipped T. Xing said DA is not intrinsic, and then plan is popular.
Okay, gotcha. So I want to talk about the other issues. Thump evidence seems to outline shutdown, disaster aid, and the defense bill. Shutdown has been punted by the House to a continuing resolution. Disaster aid and the defense bill both have not passed the House. How do they cause fights in the Senate?
Requires floor time to actually pass the continuing resolution. Same with NEA. They're not doing a continuing resolution. They're planning to actually negotiate defense modernization. So that takes floor time. But all of our argument is like, if you're correct that judicial nominees is top of the docket, then the plan would probably trade off with those other things, not judicial nominees, given that you've said it's such a high priority for Democrats.
Why is that true?
Well, because if it is the case that they're prioritizing nominations and they would rather trade off with other things, or those other things will inevitably trade off with judicial nominations because they won't be able to devote the floor time.
Okay.
You have to present a piece of evidence that says if some new piece of legislation was introduced and it was controversial, they would sacrifice judicial nominations and they would not sacrifice just choose to do a CR instead of renegotiate the NDA or choose to not do the farm bill or permitting or anything else.
I want to talk about the Martin evidence, the plan popular. This is not about the plan, it's about a fuel subsidy in the farm bill from
no,
months
that's not
ago.
accurate. It says that they support provisions that will support SAF. The plan is an example of a provision that will support SAF because SAF producers will be able to generate credits under the plan standards and sell those credits, which effectively boosts their revenues and enables the industry to be scaled up. This says that kind of legislation, as well as just the general pitch of a bill that improves SAF, and the SAF industry is broadly popular with
any of
sides.
the highlighted parts of the evidence that you've read?
So it doesn't use those words verbatim, but the evidence clearly says that they support provisions. It says Republicans and Democrats both have included provisions to boost SAF in their version of the bill.
Okay, sure.
And even Republicans have said they think SAF should be eligible under current guarantees, which is what we've said the plan could be.
Okay, Sure. The vote switching argument, just like what does this mean?
Basically, Congress people won't cut off their nose just to spite their face if they support judicial nominations now and then they don't like the plan. They wouldn't backlash against the plan by voting against something that they want to happen. It also makes the argument that because of partisanship, they inevitably just toe the party line. And so, for example, if you're a Democrat and you want judicial nominations because you want your party to control the bench,
Okay, sure.
why would the
Real quick,
plan
where
make
did
you
you
decide to
mark the
not support
Chevron
your
card?
own judges?
Where did you mark the Chevron card?
The Chevron card was marked significant impact.
these subsets?
That's the one that's, yeah, not adopt, right?
Yeah, not adopt.
Yeah.
Rates to set, and then the case and order of the 1AC. I said 407, right? Let me
Yeah.
put that in chat. Okay, everybody good?
No, I don't even have it.
Yeah, I am still dockless. There it is.
And scanning for viruses.
Yeah, Gmail needs to upgrade this virus scanner thing, man.
I think it's verbatim. I think
No, there's no problems with verbatim. Verbatim's perfect.
yes. T rates 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
One sec.
Alright, cool. Topical apps must adopt a market-based instrument that price emissions university to all sectors, vote negative on jurisdiction, the 1C red, make Henry evidence that define the word NBI, it's in the resolution that the 2C did not counter-define. Hold the line, it means you check out on topicality because no counter-termination and no we-me argument in this debate means its debate is over and presume they're not topical because topicality is a question of whether or not this debate should have happened in the first place, and we had defined a word in the resolution, they did not counter-define. Everything they said in the 2C is irrelevant, they only said we-me in the word in, but they did not make a we-me argument for market-based instrument, which matters the AFF pigs, functional limits, reasonability. Who cares in a world in which it's not offensive because they dropped the definition of the resolution? I'm not going to answer any of it, and you can just check out now. Economy dissent. The dissent outweighs their revenue impact worse, but we only we have an internal link. Wishart says the impact is triggered by unstable markets, but resolved by strong monetary policy. The more their evidence is that is negative because it's about monetary miscalibration, where the Fed gets it wrong, which has nothing to do with ag productivity or exports from rural communities, but rather the ability of the Federal Reserve to respond to inflation. The plan sends mixed signals that incite volatility, which disrupts confidence. Now it turns the case. Wishart says downturns cause cooperation, makes warming inevitable, which turns advantage to 1 and turns advantage 2 because decline obviously destroys power projection and makes airlines and deterrence impossible, turns advantage 3 because their internalists are about to decline. Now the economy is cooking and growth is locked in. The prospect of future rate cuts is driven by investor and consumer confidence, low unemployment, declining prices. It's not inevitable. The Fed's take monetary policy inflation nearly 2% target, and market sentiment hinges on the expectations. That's the share evidence permutation to both net benefit because it spikes prices, which our evidence says is the sufficient cost of the Fed to overreact. Now there are no cuts. Now evidence is wrong. The war in their evidence is immigration, tax cuts, tariffs. The surprise, the 1C counterplan fiats out of all three of those things, so it's not cannot be uniqueness. Now monetary policy will calibrate solid growth and inflation data is negative. Will U.S. Bank elevate the Fed continues to recalibrate monetary policy as inflation receives investors anticipate continued cuts. The Fed would assess income data developing outlook at the economy demonstrates solid growth. Now Fed release to be track of the economy markets watch closely. Inflation coming down, the labor market continuing stable after Trump. The power down play monetary policy ramification election would have no effect on our decision. Markets say one more cut coming. The next argument is volatility. The Patterson evidence from 2022. It's priced in now over evidence from this week and says that the Fed will cut rates given existing prices. The same with their no hurry to cut evidence. We agree the Fed is in no hurry to cut, but their evidence is that that's about 2025, not the interim, which the plan obviously would change. Now they say the next two arguments about the CPI data is negative because inflation was still cooling at a lesser rate. The next argument about the high prices in the airline sector did not matter because those are already factored into the Fed. So there's only a risk that the plan makes it worse and changes the Fed's calculus to the link. The plan causes an inflationary spiral and forces an interest rate hike. One input cost industry is a critical input for every industry. So firms will raise prices if they fear that their next and workers will demand higher wages. That wage raises the inflation rate and forces the Fed to raise rates. They cannot link our are disad. 1, the 1C and Lely evidence says that aviation sector is linked to many sectors, which will prove our spillover argument below. The 1C wing evidence says that the SAF market will foster energy security by reducing dependency on fossil fuels, which sends other signals to other markets that we do not care about. The oil now price hikes trigger inflationary spiral by body 23 oil price inflation share interconnected relationship fluctuations in the price have a significant impact on the price of the cost of energy increase and higher costs get pass along to consumers along leading to cost push inflation. Oil is critical to when prices surge. The risk of the production cost for business and inflation expectations play a crucial role. If consumers anticipate increases in prices, they may demand higher wages, contributing to an inflationary spiral. The Federal Reserve may respond by increasing interest rates higher. Rates slow down growth. The SAF cost increases prices by buying no 24 sustainable fuels. The expensive cost of the cleaner fuel. Double the price of fossil fuels made aviation companies resort to price hikes to keep their margin. Decarbonization of aviation industry is expected to cost $5 trillion. Now they'll have to pay to neutralize aviation's carbon footprint. To the perception link, the plan signals that all firms will be included within a scope of carbon pricing. Hanging 23 carbon prices policies have a significant negative impact on stock higher prices, lead to increase in employee cost for firms. There's a direct channel linking to carbon pricing. Carbon policy and stocks tied policy, sustainable policymakers resolve to reduce emissions. Such a policy surprise can be an indication that policy will continue in the future with the ultimate objective to ensure that all firms, including firms that do not participate in the ETS, and internalize the externalities. Now, the next argument about no Fed overreactions, that's wrong, disproven by their own evidence, says that the Fed is not in a hurry to cut and are watching the data closely. The next argument about how rate hikes have been high recently. It does not take it on internally because the Wishart evidence says that it is only about when the Fed is wrong. The Fed hike rates and the markets trusted the Federal Reserve to be correct about their inflationary expectations, which they were. The cuts don't solve evidence. It's old. Newer cuts are necessary to avoid a recession. Termers 11.7. If the Fed is fortunate to only back a rate will allow the economy to grow. Any recession inflation could force a hard landing analysis, or less worried about a recession. Yields have been moved out of a recession. Also have gone down. Yields consumers and better looks like an economy with strong fundamentals to fear about later. Liberty market slowdown have been oversold. The economy is close to a soft landing. The next argument about no impact rate cuts is answered above because it's about the Fed's credibility and expectations that they're right about inflation. Renewables inevitable. Renewable transition inevitable. Not carded in the 2EC, but it's also priced in now into the Fed's decision making. Conditionality was at the bottom of the 2EC. They literally said 4 words, so you get the. So all I have to say is conditionality is not a voter. Just vote is not solved because 2EC did not get a warrant, so you should not let the warrant get one. Climate advantage. The plan fails and increases habitat destruction and shorts agriculture because it requires 20% more acres of land and rapidly accelerates deforestation, results in a larger internal link to deforestation. That's the lost of evidence. Tech will not arrive fast enough. The plan at best decarbonizes aviation by 2060, and their evidence says it reduces only 30% of their emissions by the decade. Biofuels, global palm oil production, storage, and distribution, none of which exists now. I don't think the 2EC responsive because I just read biofuels good, but does not answer to the scalability of that technology in the first place, which matters. Concede defense to deforestation. I'm not going for it as external, and concede other countries stuff, which means there's other country sectors inevitably screws black carbon or whatever their impact is because they will just emit. Now, it turns all 3 advantages: allocating land, constrains food supplies for including more land for biofuels, slowing carbon sequestration, and sequestration, which collapses the economies of scale, fuel transition to slow McGuire, and then trade to industry betting heavily on sustainable aviation fuel. But exports are concerned about security of supply only enough to replace less than 1% of the global industry. It's about double the price. Transition is natural thinking moment. And then 24 hopes that the replacement of fuels for airlines / carbon pollution are misguided and worse than climate crisis and realistic or the scalable alternative at standard kerosene-based jet fuels touted sustainable aviation fuels will have the sharp place in the time frame needed for climate change. Huge green Washington exercise the aviation industry magical thinking they will be able to do this. It's not just scalable burning sustainable aviation fuels. It still emits some carbon dioxide market at dioxide. Now there's no warming internal. They conceded will concede in other countries matter as well. Aviation only accounts for 2.5% of global emissions. Black carbon is not explained in the 2EC. So assume other sectors definitely thump. There's no ozone impact. Species are resilient in trees. Soften the blow, which enables adaptation. Is also reason why the plan makes it worse, and also conceding deforestation. Defense definitely takes this out because it means that they don't have an impact at all. So don't solve climate change. That was above energy dependence is not resolved by the plan because they either do end energy dependence by forcing the transition away. It links to the econ dissad, or they don't, and they don't solve. Now readiness. Air power does not stop war. One is no different than any other weapons platform that is prone to political pressures that generate misuse and overuse, and has empirically failed to win despite air superiority. That's Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. That's the Cloudfire evidence to readiness is irrelevant. There are other explanations for peace, democracy, lack of alternatives, etc. All prove it's proven by the lack of empiricism of readiness. Wars in the Middle East thump the ability of it to solve. 3, it's inevitable. Their evidence says that DoD is testing it now, so if it's a question of scalability, defense on the first advantage applies here, and then we'll just do it inevitably. 4, no readiness impact. World War 21 alarmist focus on rogue states all faded into history's dustbin. Iran and North Korea now threatens major military aggression requirements. For containment do not require the U.S. maintain large forces. Plenty of time to build on if sanctions and diplomatic forays fail. The ethanol advantage. 1, ag's irrelevant for rural decline. Packard 17 problem with notion ag will reduce poverty. Few Americans employed in ag and rural areas. Number of workers decline. Growth in the market help underscore how dramatic decline in farm workers has been. Employment swings by the season of workers. Most workers are employed In metro areas, only 45% of farm workers are rural, 45% in urban. The majority who work in rural areas do not work on farms. Only 6% of workers in non-metro areas are on farms, and non-metro employment is higher in sectors as trade, governance, transportation, utilities, consistent with the market trends away from manufacturing and farming toward onto service. Only a small segment of those employed would benefit. Ag safety 2, populism is constrained. Wildland 24. Analysis highlights possibility does not establish a lot of probability. Consider whole set of populist research finds that for 40 populist governance, only 7 to push authoritarian rule. Worse outcomes, less common than fear. Liberal pluralism commands considerable strength. Institutional checks and balances hold firm. In opposition to forces mobilized, most populists have failed him by checks, careers done and by haphazard decisions before damage. 3 shocks empirically is silly. White shirt is about full and unexpected economic collapse, which is explained on the interest rates. Decide no food wars. Fancy 18. Little mirror that food increases conflict. Conflict requires people to have means and will. Must on starvation and opposition to resort to violence. Disconnect more complex link to land corruption, democratic reforms, and econ research show while the media tend to seek resource explanations. Go back to the climate advantage. There's no warming impact or South 23 data does not give reason to expect irreversible existential catastrophe. Earth had been much harder with 17 degrees Celsius extinctions. Limited seen rapid warming before Greenland, Swiss Alps of Syria, Nevada, Northern Hemisphere, Greenland, California, Southwest U.S. Abundant evidence of survival water rates compared to worst case scenarios. Confidence he must regard in numbers tech and forewarning survive.
Are you good?
Yes.
The recutting of the Wang evidence, you've read a line that says it stabilizes oil prices by mitigating supply shocks, and then you've read evidence that says oil price volatility is bad. I'm confused why you haven't read a link turn for us.
The Wang evidence, well, one, it relies on you to win the idea that oil volatility is being translated into the Fed now, which neither side has read any evidence on.
No, you've read evidence in the 2NC that says that high oil prices and price volatility causes inflation. I am just confused. Then you've read evidence that says that the app stabilizes volatility.
This
Why
is
does
your
app
card.
not
We're
mitigate
pointing to the
inflation?
line in the card where you say you resolve the dependency on oil. We have red link evidence that says
Says
that
that it
dependency on oil is good because
reduces-
it stabilizes prices.
No, you've read evidence that says that that says that there's price volatility in oil now. The plan would stabilize that.
First of all, we did not read it. The one you see read. We're outlining the portion of the card where he says it reduces dependency
I'm
on
just
oil.
confused. Explain the internal link between plan
Because
and higher
then
oil prices.
the 1C evidence indicates that oil is a critical input for every industry. We've just mentioned a portion of the 1C evidence that says that you solve a transition away from oil.
Walk me through this. We use oil now. Plan means there's less demand for oil. My understanding of Econ 101 is that the price would go down.
No, the plan would increase the cost of oil.
No,
because
oil
it's about
is used in planes. The plan says use SAF instead. Like, I'm just confused. What are we missing?
Because it's the spillover argument. The evidence that we read below says that indicates that the government will increase the price of oil in other industries
How
because
does
they
the
want to transition
government
to renewables.
increase the price of oil? What? I'm so
The
confused.
Hang evidence says that
Vanderlaw
other-
evidence,
the-
it says we expect the green transition to drive inflation higher in the medium term. Link uniqueness, question mark?
The Hang evidence says that other firms would fear that the government would enact ETS systems
I'm
within their own
confused. Like,
sectors,
this
which
evidence
increases
about
the price of
transition is about like renewables, solar panels, all that jazz, and says that that is causing inflation now. So I'm just confused. Like, what is the
and
uniqueness?
our uniqueness evidence, which postdates all of your evidence, says that it's
So
priced
your
into the Federal
argument is
Reserve.
like there's a broad economy-wide transition happening now, but for some
No,
reason
our
the
argument
plan's
is that
transition
there is somewhat of a
doesn't cause it?
transition now. It's priced in. The Hang evidence says that the plan causes other firms to fear that carbon pricing schemes will now be applied to their
the
sectors.
ethanol
Like the Hang
advantage-
evidence is what I'm basing the link evidence on. I will stake the debate on the Hang evidence.
The ethanol evidence, you've asserted that there's like a distinction somehow between recession and economy-wide collapse as it pertains to the Weishart evidence. What is that
The
distinction?
Weishart evidence says that the world in which the economy collapses is a world in which the firms lack trust in federal monetary policy to.
Wait, that's literally just
stake-
not accurate. Like you've
Yeah,
read
no,
internal
that's
link
what the
evidence
Weishart
that says
evidence
that,
says.
but
I
where
literally-
does the Weishart evidence says that it's about monetary policy?
I will point the line. It's about miscalibration in terms of expecting inflation. Like I've read this card so many times.
Okay,
I
I
can
don't
pull
have
up the
any
one
other
seat.
questions.
Take that.
Yeah, they're probably not. Yeah.
states than politics. Can I get the timer? Okay. Michigan, y'all are good? States not going forward. Any theory is answered by conditionality. Politics. The DA outweighs magnitude. Unchecked Trump ensures asterisk destroys democracy, establishes AI weapons, and erodes all of government. That's the Stanley evidence. The impact goes functionally conceded. No unregulated tech hard as word salad does not get to a warrant, just as selectively amplified risk, which does not rise to the level of a response to our impact. So I'm only going to answer that. Warrant totalitarian lock. It ensures that no new 1AR answers clear. 24. What makes totalitarian regimes distinct is complete and forced subservience characterized by mass violence. Billions will be stuck in a terrible situation with little hope of recovery. Fate worse than extinction. And independently, they dropped democracy. Destabilization causes great power. War. No new answers, and conceded the internal link that judges do provide a check on Trump. No new answers. That turns the case. Judicial appointments are key to climate regulations. Lash 1114. The Senate must confirm all Biden's nominees that Trump's return follows overturning a difference. Trump's antipathy for regulations posed for environmental rules. Conservative jurisprudence entails narrow readings of statutes, which could lead to broad-based regulations being struck down. Businesses have already mounted attacks on regulations governing power plants. Now 2AC1 was that it is a tiny number. The 1C uniqueness evidence says the top priority is to pass more now, and Dems are doing everything they can to accelerate, and appointments will get confirmed. America 1113 demand justice is set to bomb our Capitol Hill. Democrats need to stay in Washington. Democrats are seeking to deny opportunities to name conservative judges. The push will confront an already full schedule in the Senate. Sure, we are going to get as many done as we can to demand justice. Plan includes a widespread lobbying effort, press events, and the new website is more urgent than ever. Warren urged Schumer to use every minute of the session to confirm judges with limited time remaining. It is critically important. Now 2AC2 was other issues. There are 4 warrants. 1 was shut down. That got punted. Doesn't matter. 2 was disaster, and 2 and 3 was disaster and defense bills. This is politics 101. They have not yet passed the House, so cannot cause fights in the Senate, even if for NEG, because the plan would come before all of those. The 2AC does not have a warrant for why the plan would go below nominations. Fiat means that the plan would go to the top of the docket. Now 3 was Manchin. The warrant is highlighted to shouldn't be skeptical, and Manchin is on board. Newcomb 1114 Manchin is opening to voting for Dem nominees, even if they get to get Republican support. Reversal could be key. We're in a different times. This is the last call. This is the last call. Manchin's vote is critical, and Manchin won't block entry. 11-8 Manchin declared he wouldn't vote for picks if they didn't have one Republican. The senator loves media attention. He bucked his own rule and voted to advance one of Biden's picks. Mark the card at picks. Now 2AC3 was that floor time is thumped. The floor time is thumped. The warrant is Trump, Elon Musk, and McConnell. Warrant to rely on Republicans not voting now, but they will. Headley 1113 Republicans ignored Trump's mandate to oppose confirmation. Collins and Murkowski voted for Biden's picks. Collins and Murkowski have those sway on judicial nominees and the narrowly divided Senate, and it's the Senate's top priority. Tati 1113 Democrats are racing to confirm judges. The White House is calling on Democratic senators to work around the clock and seek as a desire to enhance Biden's legacy while limiting Trump's capacity. Aides are urging Democrats to move quickly. There is a push across the board. The tight schedule will depend on high Democratic attendance to overcome Republican determination. Now 2AC4 was not intrinsic. The link proves that it is intrinsic. Reject this. It kills all ground because NEDA can be compensated, and politics is core and timely education. Now 2AC5 was that the plan is popular, but Martin evidence is wrong. It's not about the plan. It's about a fuel subsidy in the Farm Bill, not responsive to our link about green regulations, and it doesn't even say they reached an agreement about that, which proves it triggers the debate. Now Metzger says a regulatory regime for aviation reforms results in extreme backlash. Climate change policy is incredibly polarized, and ideologically motivated interest groups will fight tooth and nail to block government climate measures, and it triggers lobbying backlash, and the link zeros the case large. 24 airlines lobbying against regulations, making jet fuel more expensive, does not incentivize airlines to buy more SAF, and does not incentivize producers to increase productions. It's a clash of the Titans. Airlines consider themselves international players that can't be touched. Now 2AC6 and 7 authority shields group. Then the plan must be Congress. 1 normal means is Congress. Brand Comp 21. There's no federal LLCF. Potential national LLCFS. Should Congress choose to enact an LLCF, Congress may design the program that satisfies congressional priorities. Congress has multiple options to consider, and RFS proves Cattell et al. 23. The Renewable Fuel Standard was brought into the law via the Energy Policy Act and was later expanded through the Energy Independence and Security Act, both of which amended the CAA. And this also is simply not how FAA authorization works. It requires Congress to approve non-active standards. LIS et al. 23. FAA reauthorization refers to a periodic process through which Congress develops legislation to renew authorizing statutes as well as update relevant laws governing aviation programs carried out by the FAA. normal means requires Congress post liberal right only congressional authorization of the FAA survives Metzner. 24, the court and liberal right eliminate chaperone regs are right for challenges FAA expect more legal challenges post liberal right rather than deferring the FAA's interpretation courts substitute their judgment liberal right increase a chance of success challenging agency regs FAA now have to consider litigation risk expect this decision to delay rulemaking efforts unless explicitly directed by Congress. Now normal means clarification of the plan is the best, it's most predictable, which shapes research independently. Lack of plan specification is a voting issue skews one of these strategy by allocating ad hoc clarification of their mechanism decking clash. Now the Schonberg evidence doesn't get them out of this because the link isn't about PC, rather backlash to the plan, which all of our link evidence says is likely. Now 2AC8 was no vote switching, not what the DA link is about. It's about floor time. Just getting them onto the floor is what matters. 2AC9 was numbers the same warrants as 2AC1, but their evidence does conclude that judicial confirmations are the top priority now, which means that there's only a risk of a link. Nominations are the priority in the Senate. Fracking 1111 is a short to do list times. Hope the other priorities, while they have the majority of funding, it is likely that Congress will pass another short-term extension. Final agreement will be difficult. Disaster relief would act in a bipartisan fashion to supply what is needed. Defense bill Senate version has not been brought as Dems reserve floor time for other priorities. Democrats have been made confirming judges a high priority. Durbin aims to confirm every nominee possible. Schumer lined up votes an indication of the priority Democrats are placing on the issue, and Schumer is prioritizing judges now. Newcomb 1114. This is the last call confirmations are the top priority for Schumer through the end of the year. Schumer is planning to move on more judges and told his caucus to prepare to be in town for long weeks. Now 2AC 10 was done on the overview. 2AC 11 was Chevron, but insofar as this is true, Biden being able to appoint activist judges is good because it means that those judges would then be more willing to constrain Trump, which is just extra solvency for our internal link. Urgency ensures passage now, but every seat matters. Raji Moore's 1113. The Senate confirmed 14 Trump judges after Biden. Democrats are pledging a similar effort. The clock is ticking, and we're held, and we're going to be relentless. Every seat matters. Nominees are awaiting a floor vote. Democrats have a better shot because lawmakers will face less pressure to vote against. Mark that against.
740.
740.
Was it sent out or was it in the doc?
It was in the doc. It was the one with the stars on 2AC3. And it was marked at against.
there's limited impact and no ozone impact, not going to go for it, but it doesn't destroy agriculture, there's no impact to food, and no evidence says that it causes farm stock decline, so it cannot turn the third advantage. Tech does arrive fast enough. Some supply exists now, so demand side policy is key, because it sparks investment. The military has unique interests, so it does not defense is the second advantage. Biomass, algae, and other technology infrastructure means that the turn is mitigated in that status quo ethanol growth. Also, thumps any offense that can get from this because the RFS exists now. The readiness advantage. Air is unique. It causes ISR freedom of action for basic first strikes. For bombers which all go nuclear. Old conflicts now, so Russia, China, North Korea, all testing US resolved now. Wars that didn't escalate in the past because of US air power. SAF is scalable now because it's not scalable now. Absent the pricing mechanism because it does not allow for things like forward basing in. Low volatility means that the internal link is conceded. So even if testing is inevitable as supply, we cannot scale up inside of the military. Yes, impact molar. There's way too old to just as sanctions and diplomacy could check, but that's impossible in a world where air power no longer exists and allows the US to collect its military power. Air power is the last line of defense to deter nuclear use because hotspots exist now, which is the money see evidence. Not the no advantage. Agriculture is significant. Corn is the backbone of the US economy. Even if unemployment is insignificant, there's billions of dollars inside of the agriculture industry. They've conceded uniqueness. Fiscal miscalibration is inevitable. Crashing farmland values outweigh on scope, but Hala's on rules economy. Causing unemployment leads to farmland debt. The debt crisis was a shock to banks and spikes food prices, which is Stokes. Empirics is our argument because it would be worse than the 1980s financial farm crisis. Permanently ends corn, which is the backbone of the U.S. world economy. It says, quote, the stress on financial institutions would be historic. The substantive A. 1. Conceded, planned in a vacuum. It's the least arbitrary metric. Then the 2AC conceded no new 200 applications because you should strike any new 200 answers because they would be new and one of your strategies was predicate of it. We meet aviation is economy-wide as per their arguments. 1 and C did not have a violation. So we meet generally also solves this. Adopt the clean energy policy. Modifies MBI, which means that it's key to all AFF ground rules. Causes picks. Lastly, reasonability conceded. Topicality and jurisdiction cause substance credit. So you cannot vote on it. Functional limit solves all of their offense. 2 and C did not have an offensive justification. So this is irrelevant. Lastly, is that our offense in the 2AC impact turns universalizing the missions because it makes after sitting duck. The rates the no turns case. Air capabilities are key to production, not economic data. We have separate internal links to recession. So you can't turn it. They read a link first. Oil prices are high now because of supply tracks. The plan reduces the reliance on oil by replacing with SAF. Reducing demand in one industry brings prices down, which makes it cheaper for others, which is the wing evidence. Aviation costs are skyrocketing now. Forces a rate hike inevitably. If they're correct, that aviation is key. 1. Jet fuel prices are increasing to 90%. Volatility creates unpredictability, spikes costs. And then road structures of the tunnel indicator second flight costs are high, drop. They're all-time high because of cost of jet fuel and labor, which is a whole set of evidence. That dumps the link. The Fed knows ticket prices are high and still have not raised rates, which proves the no overreaction argument. Jet fuel they're driving up at 120 prices. Jet fuel increasing every time they protect. 90% increase in 250% per store. They're driving price volatility, driving capacity, shifting capacity. Jet fuel. Russian price logical chain causes price rate. 95% increase in jet fuel. 8 million increase. Cost it imposes huge costs that are increasing relentless when it rise. The jet fuel reaches the highest 47% of jet fuel. There's a major cost for airlines accounting for 30% of cost. IT. Another card giver. Support SAF. SAF makes the industry sustainable. It reduces public scrutiny and solves unsustainable growth. The jet fuel prices and makes costs predictable, which is Patterson. Scale up and solves the link. Economies of scale and tech advances. Lower costs will become cost competitive. And in the long term, the link is tiny. Costs are marginal and will be 9% increases at the highest, which is the PwC and it's the plan spurs. Economy-wide cost reductions in the short term and long term. 24 hours. Reduce pollution, generate 4 billion investment for industry track business reduce supply. And cost volatility. This must cost protect extra assets 40% per gallon. Consumer choices, consumer increase low carbon. And the fuel reduce 42%. And the 20 billion. Every empiric and macroeconomic consensus disproves the link lunacy. And then 21 is one of the expanding market lower cost of achieving a single cost. Over the cost of agree with market and set for just spend lower cost every ETS lower the cost of next SAFs can be backdropped by adopting fuel efficiency ratio stock and 15 fuel economy. The scaling the industry is key. As shown in 24 SAFs. Okay, where do you want me to transition it? The green transition link described economy-wide transition. That proves there's no link since other industries outweigh. It says transition is already happening and causing inflation. So the link is not unique. It's not priced in because their F says that it's coming in the medium term. And it's all about renewables, not SAF, so it doesn't apply. There's no overreaction or perception link. The Fed is cautious and then waits for data to be sure they don't look at single commodities like airline tickets because single industries suggest notes which are sure hikes. Don't come based on preliminary perception return 24 power thought. Unlikely next move would be what to take versus evidence policy now. No straight to that would include inflation policy down over 24 power. The main expectation will linear hockey Chinese and find out for more blanket house are likely to reason to become hockey chairman to one Sunday holiday. Formally would be dollars. Core inflation outweighs single commodities while causing 23 unlikely to keep raising rates will do oil prices especially when core inflation. Trending now is judicial nominee first ASPEC reject non-restricted arbitrary interest goalposts. We specify that, but this is a normal means question, which means that if their definitions of Congress are correct, then there's no offense and we mean in a vacuum. Now the overview: extinction outweighs S-risk. It's irreversible and pleasure outweighs pain because the latter is subjective. Deviation from the baseline of extinction causes suffering too. The emerging characteristics are inflated because of psychic bias. Reject fear of unknowns or emerging tech, which is correlated. No evidence says they get to totalitarianism, but general emerging tech characteristics when the emerging tech leader with lack of understanding tech internal option challenge reward including the space hypersonic quantum attack on a syntax like changing gears discussion English majority usability policy and return attack because this limited the limitation of intention not representing assessment like look at media from a revolution look on the question of factors is air power turns democracy stabilization because the democracy wars do not escalate absent air all causes every other country authoritarians no reason 4 years of US policy is key to global emerging tech or democratic decline the squoze solves the internal intense case 24 first navigate whether being prepared only same as the courts that the majority show please get through this environmental rate receptive after in terms of to conservative warfare maybe law resistance happening for doing what they ought. The internal link is minuscule. There are 890 federal judges. At best, Biden can confirm 23, which is 0.25% of federal benches. Conservatives already control the Supreme Court, so low-level district courts. Everything they can is still nothing. And Trump will get another 100 during his term. DA's low last in 11, 14, 25 GP judges local legislators such as Trump. After he so many years, they'll retire after January 20th last in 11, 14. Judges step down after Trump which will retire. Conservative judges more likely, even if it's the go down to the link, even if the bill is a priority, the link is stumped working. The clock includes all of these learning and elements issue whatever flow time so majority the process showing for Trump suggested not every there evidence says that 2 Republicans might sway but they back Trump other priorities Murphy and 11 there's not such a lawmaker other party risk nominations confirmations for levy and 14 30 I'll go out every like have slow process and no focus on defense appropriation there's way too much from no judge would be approved lastly intrinsic uniqueness is wrong. Reuters 11 nominated if you Republican blocked in Maggie in the park. Tills opposes Raymond 11 to secret vote. Bernard nominee White House not select our person park will never get confirmed.
357.
How much?
357.
357?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because we took that
I thought it
action.
was, okay. Yeah. I thought it was less than 357.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I'm out to do.
Yeah. All these studies were like, yeah, like we have no idea how this works, but like for white dudes, it is banging.
Nice.
So congratulations.
Hell yeah.
Really happy for you.
Alright, thanks. Really need that.
Yeah. Can reduce dementia. They say.
I'll get that there.
Honestly, I keep forgetting more sense.
I can stand.
Yeah.
Orders the rates to set. The politics to set. Topicality. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Everybody good?
Yeah, no. One second. He said no.
Oh. Okay, cool. I'm going for the race to decide because remember back to Tuesday cross stakes when I said I would stake the debate on the hang evidence in the Tuesday. The winner says card 0 and it says spillover argument. The winner does not answer, which means I will concede that no single issues factor into the Federal Reserve, which means that aviation practices do not matter and do not factor into the Fed. The only thing that matters is the economy-wide inflation, which the plan certainly costs. The hang evidence is phenomenal. You should read it at the end of the debate and conclude negative. It says that the indication of the plan causes other firms to fear that they're going to be targeted next by the plan. The MITS evidence connects that and says that in war in which the companies fear that an emission trading system will be applied to them, they will increase input prices because they rely heavily on oil. The hang evidence is phenomenal. It says that the Alta would signal policymaker resolve to reduce emissions. That policy surprise will be taken as an indication that will continue in the future with the ultimate objective ensuring that all firms would be priced in, which causes a massive inflationary spiral from the immediate perception of the plan, which definitely takes out all of their defense. Now the collapse outweighs. They read the impact force, economic decline, triggers nuclear conflict, and classic cooperation over things like climate change and pandemics, which are all existential risks. Only we have an internal link to it because the evidence is literally about when the Fed gets it wrong. Our one in our evidence on the internal link is important here. They have dropped that future cuts are necessary to avoid a recession. The one in our evidence, where I read at the bottom of the race, says that future cuts are necessary to solve, but any resurgence in inflation will cause the Fed to overreact, and this destroys their ability to regulate monetary stability. Now, oil prices high. They have no evidence that is possible. They have evidence that oil fluctuates, but the Tuesday evidence post states that and says that oil prices are already factored into the Federal Reserve and concludes that the Fed is likely to continue cutting rates. Now, I'll read a card on this because I'm pretty sure this is a new argument. The oil prices are low, discountable, low drop. Oil prices 2-week low drop and 5% over the past 2 sessions, shorter dollar. Disappointed over China's benchmarks the lowest since October. OPEC cuts are forecasted to demand for lower production, making fourth conservative downward of supply side not having desired impact maintain the Brent price floor at $70. They say dumpers over the dumpers. That's answered by them dropping the counter plan that says that prohibits Trump from doing things like immigration, tariffs, and tax cuts, which instead definitely ensures near-term inflation remains 0. Now, no Fed overreactions is wrong. Our evidence says that the Fed, Jerome Powell is watching inflation closely, and any indication that inflation is resurging and causes a rate hike, and then tips us into recession. Now the link turn about the SAF being costly and being economically good does not matter because it's about the perception of spillover causing other countries, other companies to spike rates. The SAF can be good for growth and lower prices in that sector, but it does not matter because none of the evidence speaks to perceptions for other companies. Also, this link is just wrong. Remember back in cross-section when they were explaining how the plan solves it alters consumption behavior away from fossil fuel inputs for prices. Think about this logically. If that were to be true, then obviously if the price of airline tickets are outpacing inflation now and skyrocketing, then why is that not a sufficient reason to alter demand? That's because alternatives like biofuels are still expensive. Consumers do not have a choice, so it means that producers know this and will just increase the prices to offset the standard that the plan imposes. They say in Paris and SAF reduces the cost that was answered by. They say green transition inevitable. That is wrong. They don't have a card. And the Tuesday evidence says that oil is running the world and demand is stable, which means there's no transition to renewables. And it's already priced into the Federal Reserve now. They say no Fed overreactions that was answered above. The internal link evidence is important here because it says the Fed will overreact now because they're so concerned about inflation that any resurgence will cause it. They say the plan does not create perceptions of rate hikes. This is the two are going to try to convince you that this answer the hang evidence. Their evidence about Fed overreactions to perceptions of increases in inflation. Our evidence about firms perceiving the plan to be applied to them in the future, which causes them to jump the gun and increase their own prices. Now they say how does it impact into core inflation? That was answered above because one sector does not matter, but the entire economy does. Now they also dropped the counter plan. It solves Trump and forbids them from doing anti-democratic thing. Which, by the way, they read an impact card in the one area that says that Trump screws democracy. The one in our Reddit democracy impact that says that causes totalitarian locking, which means the counter plan also solves something. There's no permutation, so you can vote on it externally. The politics is that I'm not going to go for it. There's nothing that can be cross-applied to the dissent and cross-outs will be new. Should strike out for full Topicality. I don't care, actually, the first advantage. They obviously screwed up going for this, for not answering our arguments well. Over 2 and 1 and C evidence is much better than theirs, and says that the reason why biofuels are not being scaled up and now why the aviation industry is not transitioning towards sustainable development is because it lacks the capability to do so. Our evidence says it requires 20% more land, which none of the one was responsive to. They just said it conceded deforestation, and they made a bunch of other arguments that did not apply. You should read this as a case turn. Even if I lose the other dissent, you can vote on this independently because it screws our ability to have rural agriculture because it demands such an excess amount of land that it screws over the corn and food exports because we'd all just have massive corn fields in order to supply the jet fuel necessary for the AFF, which means it takes out advantage 3 and it becomes offense for us because there's only a risk the plan makes it worse. It definitely takes out advantage 2 because the ability of the Air Force to generate air power requires on the ability to scale that technology. There is no evidence that says that they can scale that technology in the first place. Otherwise, they would have already done so, and there's not enough land to do it. And they conceded it also takes until 2060 to do so, which means there's no short-term impact to the case. You should read our cards after the debate. It's much better than theirs on this question. The readiness advantage, and that its readiness is probably inevitable given adversaries empirically back down traditional economic sanctions and diplomatic forays deter. But obviously they don't have an internal link to this because the ability to scale up new air power will obviously take years and years and years, and that perception means that there's no short-term impact to the case, and there's no way they can scale fast enough because our evidence says that at least their only evidence literally says it only scales 30% by 2030, and our evidence says that it only reaches net zero by 2060, which is obviously does not matter. This obviously has a larger internal link to this argument as well because it's about economic decline, which gives the perception of weakness that allows adversaries to take windows of opportunities, which is a larger internal link to deterrence collapse. And obviously a strong economy would deter because it incentivizes other countries to not go to war. The ethanol advantage, they do not solve ag emissions for the same reason of the deterrent on advantage 1, which means they don't have an internal link to our dissent because farmland is irrelevant because the internal link the white chart evidence gives is about fiscal miscalibration, nothing about ag exports or the rural economy. It's necessary to spill over, and there's no food impact that conceded. There's no causation between those prices and war.
428.
You send the card.
Yeah.
readiness, emissions, ethanol, and then rates. Sorry.
I figured you were those.
Yeah.
You never know.
Is everyone good? Air superiority outweighs and deters every single conflict is necessary to flexibility, contain revisions, and mitigating hotspot escalation. Otherwise, war with Russia, China, Iran is inevitable. Every hotspot escalates Ukraine, Taiwan, Europe, Iran, and then North Korea. And the Middle East broadly all hinge on air superiority and mitigating extinction and underpins ground operations, gives military flexibility, precision strikes, and lets the U.S. take out command and control to compromise adversarial communication. This is empirically proven by recent conflict. In the Middle East, air superiority was the U.S.'s biggest advantage. That's all. The Berkeley evidence. Defense is non-starter. The Twin are said diplomatic sanctions, so they back down. Our evidence says broader military capacity and force protection is through the air is the backbone of nuclear deterrent forward presence. ISR and checks Iran, North Korea, China, Russia, and terrorists, which can all risk nuclear escalation. A hotspot risk exists now, so you should be skeptical about the effectiveness of status quo when dealing with adversaries. That's the base evidence scale. Up was answered on the other page, but long term was about emissions reduction, not military adoption. The nature of drop-in fuels makes it smooth. If anything, air power turns decline because it is the last line of defense before wars goes nuclear, which means that the advantage must come before the DA. Now go to the emissions advantage. Scale up as possible. The case turn is AFF solvency because the land use would grow mass ethanol, which is used for biofuels. Control says that some SAF is novel, but financial incentives make it as scalable and broader. Innovation. This also isn't applicable to the readiness area. The military is already innovating some level of fuels, but financial incentives and new innovations allow use of biofuels to be used as a drop-in forward basing and reduces adversarial independence independently. Frame this all through a drop uniqueness question. There's a lot of land currently tied up in biofuel development for cars to meet RFS fund mandates, but electric vehicle transition reduces demand for biofuels in cars, which means that that land is all opening up. That's Adamson evidence. Not enough land is incorrect because all of that is going to become available, but these also dropped that the life cycle emissions standard, the intensity standard would inevitably solve because it would create an incentive to develop regenerative ag and increase land use efficiency, which is all the Stokes evidence. At best, there's no turns case argument. It doesn't script rule agriculture. Our argument is that land values are going to fall now. Their argument is that there will be a scarcity of land values. Scarcity increases prices because lower supply increases prices and leads to more demand, which means at best it is something that is good that is happening but does not cause or impact now the ethanol advantage. The case turns the DA, not the other way around. This debate is about the difference between hollowing out every single rural economy, collapsing businesses, spiking unemployment, and causing a massive shock to the financial sector versus at most a 25 basis point rate hike or probably just the Fed delaying cuts. The former outweighs the latter. Firm land values will be cut in half, destroying food prices, causing scarcity, driving up prices, destroying businesses. It all spirals, even if their evidence just says that agriculture is small because not that many of people are employed directly in agriculture. Even if that's true, there's knock-on effects because unemployment tends to spiral, and our evidence says it will cause historical economic collapse and the worst one since the 1980s. Their assertion is that YSR is about fiscal miscalibration. To be clear, it's about economic collapse and shocks, not about when the Fed hikes rates, we just start a nuclear war for some reason. Rates. The 2 relies on this Hail Mary about company perception, but the economics of it just do not make sense. Their evidence might say that firms expect new regulations, but to certainly not say that they will raise those prices in response. At best, it would cause them to act conservatively as a result because they reduce business expansion and capital expenditures and employment as a result of the expectation of new regulations in order to hedge against it. The oil link turn also outweighs because it affects economy-wide, which is an argument that they said. They've dropped that the plan would reduce oil demand, which would alleviate pressures on every other sector. It makes it so that the aviation sector would no longer demand oil. Otherwise, oil volatility causes price shocks, and otherwise oil volatility causes price shocks. Namely, they spotted by conceding us the Wing evidence, which says that it mitigates the supply shocks and oil volatility, which means it reduces demand. Econ 101, when you reduce the demand for a commodity in one sector, then the price decreases for all other sectors, which means that if they're correct that other sectors rely on oil, those prices are going to come down for them as a result of the plan, which is a clear link turn that was you can see from the evidence that they read in the 2NC, the counter plan. It also is a Hail Mary that solves nothing. It doesn't do the AFF, so you know the F is a DA. It doesn't solve democracy. There's never said that tariffs and deportation would be sufficient to solve, and they conceded that there's no impact to democracy anyway because checks are inevitable, and the air power turns it, so you cannot vote on this now. Aviation costs are skyrocketing now, which forces a rate hike inevitably. If they're correct, the aviation is key. 1, jet fuel prices are increasing by 90%. Volatility creates unpredictability and spike cost. That's a Catala. Second is flight costs. They drop there at an all-time high because of cost of jet fuel and labor, which is the Hauser evidence. Should thumb the link. The Fed knows that ticket prices are high and still have not raised rates. It's also the Bauer and the Roland evidence, which says it's causing massive skyrocketing price now. They read this evidence that says oil prices are low. They do not get this. We read a card in the 2AC and the 1AR that says that jet fuel prices are high now, and a piece of evidence in the 2AC that says that causes broader volatility. They should have answered it in the block. We did not read an evidence that describes the price of crude oil in the 1AR, and you will not see a piece of evidence about crude oil prices in our 1AR card document, so you should strike this off your flow because it's certainly not justified. And if they had read this piece of evidence in the block, then the 1AR would have read a card that says that they're high, but it's also wrong for predictive evidence. Even if they're right that they're low now, our evidence says that because of jet fuel demand, those oil prices are going to increase now. There's no hikes, no no overreactions or perception link. The Fed is cautious and waits for data to be sure. To be clear, this does answer the Hank evidence above, because if we're correct that the Fed is a dub and they want to bring rates down, then they will not react to the plan by increasing rates. Broadly, the trend over the past few years of inflation has been caution, not hawkness, because Powell is smarter than Kentucky and relies on the real-world data of the plan. Framing the issue, voting negative requires you to think that Jerome Powell and an army of PhD economists at the Federal Reserve are somehow way dumber than Kentucky and are going to randomly start a massive economic collapse by miscalibrating. That's wrong. Richter is an economics writer, quoting Powell, who said that he frequently is unlikely to raise rates. His quote said it will take persuasive evidence, which is not ad hoc company perception, like the 2NR has said. The 2NR sounds good that the Federal overreacts, but the 2NR worry is just that they're scared of inflation, which doesn't seem to disprove that they are dubs. They from all which evidence is better than any NEG card, and says that he might seem like a hawk, but out of experience he is bearish and he's very one-sided. Their evidence is just a quote that he's watching inflation data. No shit, he's watching inflation data. He's at the Federal Reserve, but that does not mean he will act impulsively on inflation data, specifically because they have not proven that the plan would result in inflation in the short to medium term. And now, the last argument, they dropped the thumpers. Their evidence about the energy transition says the energy transition is already happening and already causing inflation in the medium term. Examples prove, like the IRA adoption of renewable solar panels. The evidence that they read in the 1AC that in the 20 they asked about a cross-sex says it's already happening, which means that renewable and green inflation and regulatory inflation are all inevitable, and thump the link.